Welcome, everyone, to today's Explainer. We are looking at what is honestly one of the most mind-boggling archaeological enigmas on the entire planet, Göbekli Tepe. I mean, this is a site that has literally forced us to completely rethink the origins of human civilization. Okay, let's dive into this, because what we're about to uncover fundamentally changes the story of who we are, and really how we got here. So, 9,500 BCE. We are talking about the absolute dawn of the pre-pottery Neolithic period over in Southwest Asia. To put that into perspective, this staggering date completely breaks all the rules of what we previously thought early hunter-gatherers were actually capable of achieving. It marks the appearance of some of the oldest permanent human settlements anywhere in the world. And remember, this was built at a time when humans were supposed to be just simple nomads, way before the invention of the wheel or even writing.
To really ground ourselves here, let's just look at the timeline. Construction kicks off around 9500 BCE during what archaeologists call the pre-pottery Neolithic A. The site thrives, it evolves, and then, around 8000 BCE, it's just abandoned. Completely. For nearly 10,000 years, it sits there silent and buried under the earth. It wasn't actually until a 1963 survey that the site was even noted. Then there's this massive gap until 1994, when German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt finally recognized its true significance, which led to major excavations beginning the very next year.
Section 1. Ground Zero of Civilization.
Göbekli Tepe is located in Upper Mesopotamia, right in modern-day Şanlıurfa province in southeastern Turkey. But for the longest time, honestly, it just looked like a hill. Specifically a tell, an artificial mound created by centuries of human occupation. It's the sheer 50-foot-high, 20-acre mound. And just imagine this. Generations of local farmers unwittingly cultivated their crops right over it. They'd often get deeply annoyed and clear away these large, pesky rocks that were interfering with their plows, completely unaware that later on, geophysical surveys would reveal this very mound was actually hiding at least 20 large circular enclosures made of monumental stone.
Section 2. Megaliths and Monsters.
Right, so a megalith is basically just a massive stone used to build prehistoric monuments. And Göbekli Tepe is absolutely famous for containing some of the world's oldest known examples. But these aren't just your standard rough boulders. No, they are highly stylized, T-shaped pillars. The original excavator, Klaus Schmidt, believes a horizontal stone slab on top actually symbolized shoulders. He suggested these massive stones were intended to represent headless humanoid figures, so think of them as maybe surrogate worshippers, venerated ancestors, or even these towering deities just silently watching over the site. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the iconography carved into these pillars. You might naturally expect hunter-gatherers to carve the animals they actually hunted and ate for dinner, right? Things like gazelle or deer, but there is an eerie absence of typical game animals here. Instead, the art heavily focuses on formidable, dangerous creatures. We're talking lions, snakes, scorpions, spiders. You immediately get a sense of this completely different psychological landscape. There are zero depictions of organized violence or hunting raids. Instead, it's this incredibly intense world dominated by terrifying predators.
And you have to ask yourself, how on earth did they actually build this? Remember, we're talking about a time way before metal tools. These early humans used the limestone plateau itself as a giant quarry. They literally pecked the profiles of these enormous pillars directly into the rock bank, using nothing but simple stone tools. Then they detached these massive monolithic blocks and levered them out to transport them all the way to the enclosures. It is, without a doubt, an absolutely staggering engineering feat for prehistoric hunter-gatherers to pull off.
Section 3. The world's first temple. For a really long time, the dominant theory was that Göbekli Tepe was strictly a ritual center, essentially this isolated sanctuary. Schmidt envisioned these small nomadic bands of hunter-gatherers from all across the region periodically joining forces on this hilltop. It would have been almost like a prehistoric Burning Man festival, They'd undertake these massive collaborative building projects, hold these great feasts, and then, because they were nomads, they'd just scatter back into the wild again. So in this view, there were no permanent inhabitants whatsoever. And this theory sparked one of the biggest debates in all of archaeology. Did religion actually spark the need for agriculture? Prehistorians have long linked the Neolithic Revolution directly to the advent of farming. But here we have Göbekli Tepe with its monumental architecture, but initially, no evidence of farming at all. This led to a massive rhetorical question for us to ponder. Did the sudden urge to build these massive monuments and practice communal religion actually force humans to settle down and invent agriculture just so they could feed the builders? Basically, did the temple come before the city?
Section 4, the plot twist.
But then, following Klaus Schmidt's passing in 2014, the whole interpretive lens shifted completely. On the left here, we have the old paradigm, this purely nomadic ceremonial center, a temple in the middle of nowhere. But on the right, we're looking at a shocking paradigm shift based on much more recent discoveries. It turns out, Göbekli Tepe wasn't just some empty ceremonial ground after all. It was actually a thriving communal settlement. It was the hard evidence that forced this massive revision. Recent excavations started uncovering domestic housing structures covering the tell. We're talking extensive tools for processing cereals, grinding stones, mortars, pestles, the whole shebang. They even discovered stone-cut cisterns and rainwater harvesting systems. I mean, these are absolutely not the hallmarks of a place you just visit for a quick seasonal festival. These are the tools of daily village survival. It proved that people were actually living there, right on the site, for at least part, if not all, of the year. And this brilliantly illustrates the current consensus among experts today. Just as archaeologist Remy Haddad points out, that initial enthusiasm for the regional ceremonial center idea is really giving way to a vision that's a lot more complex and grounded. It perfectly aligns with other massive pre-pottery Neolithic sites we found, where the ritual stuff, the temples and the megaliths, and the profane stuff, the everyday grinding of grain and collecting of water, they just exist seamlessly, right side by side.
Section 5, rewriting human history.
The sacred and the everyday just completely coexisted. Göbekli Tepe wasn't an isolated, pristine temple sitting untouched on a hill somewhere. It was a vibrant, incredibly complex communal settlement. We now see these massive circular enclosures as part of a heavily lived-in environment. Maybe they served as large communal houses, or maybe they were these deeply sacred spaces situated right smack in the very center of a bustling early Neolithic village. Regardless, it proves our ancestors were weaving this really complex spirituality right into the fabric of their everyday survival. So the crucial point is 10%. As of 2021, despite decades of incredibly careful, painstaking work by brilliant archaeologists, only around 10% of this massive 20-acre site has actually been excavated. Just let that sink in for a second. 90% of this site is still entirely underground, just waiting to be discovered. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative thought. Long before archaeologists ever even arrived on the scene, the local Kurdish population considered this place deeply sacred. They called it Gire Mirazan, which beautifully translates to Wish Hill. Given that 90% of the site is still completely hidden from our eyes, you really have to wonder, what else is buried beneath the Wish Hill? What other astonishing secrets about the very dawn of human civilization are just waiting in the dirt right now, ready to rewrite our history books all over again? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and definitely keep your eyes on the horizon for whatever they unearth next.